I come from South Asian Legal Clinic of Ontario. It's a Legal Aid Ontario clinic. It's funded by Legal Aid Ontario. So for some of you who might not know how Legal Aid Ontario works, it's governed by the Ministry of Attorney General, but it's an independent entity, and it has two parts to it. So one part is that they give certificates out to the private bar in the areas of family law and criminal law. The other side of the Legal Aid Ontario is the community legal clinics. And what we have in GTA are some of the specialty clinics, as we call them ourselves, so which are either specialty because of the area of law they practice, or specialty because of the ethnic population they work with. So we work with South Asian community all across GTA. Although our name is South Asian Legal Clinic of Ontario, we are not funded to work all across Ontario. But saying that, I want to let you know that we do serve people all across Ontario sometimes, and sometimes in the cases of the forced marriages, we get calls from outside Canada even. So although we are not funded, we do that work. The areas of law which we cover where we provide representation is primarily immigration law. We do a lot of advice in family law and all other poverty law related matters. So the criteria for our services is obviously that the person should be living in poverty, sadly enough. That's the criteria. But in the cases of women facing violence, we always have a discretion, and we use it more times than less, because we know that women, when they face violence, don't necessarily have access to money, even if it's their own. So while I'm going to talk about the topic of honor-related violence and forced marriages, just to frame the issue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use three different sources to talk about today's topic. The one source is a research project which SALCO had been an advisory on with the University of Toronto, and this quote is from that research project. Another one would be the research report which SALCO has recently created from the survey we did with the forced marriage service providers. And number three would be SALCO's ongoing advocacy work. So we have a lot of resources we have already created on the issue of the forced marriages and the training material. So some of the stuff I'm going to talk about will be directly from there. So one of the very basic issue which we, while talking about this issue, think about is that it's, at the end of the day, it's violence against women, right? So honor-related violence, honor-based violence, call it anything, or forced marriages. It's violence against women. But the uniqueness about it is that it's not only which is happening to their, as a person, it's also about their rights as a citizen. Because a lot of times women facing this kind of violence have to decide between, do I get state protection or do I remain part of my community? So that's the struggle they face. And we have to keep that perspective in mind when we are talking about it. Because whenever women are facing violence, I personally believe whenever women are facing violence, we put a lot of burden on them. You have to protect yourself, right? It's not about how can we protect you, how can society protect you. It's all about how can you protect yourself. You have these rights, exercise it. When it comes to the violence against women in the name of honor, it goes even one step ahead. It's like you have to protect yourself and you don't be part of your community. And that's the struggle with a lot of women which they face. And I'll talk about it, elaborate it as we go forward. So in the research, as I talked about in the beginning, which we did with the UFT, we saw that a lot of times the service providers within the GTA region don't like the terminology. They either want to have so-called put in front of the honor-based violence or honor killings, they want to qualify it, or they just don't want to use it. They want to completely ignore it and be like, we don't want to use this terminology, it's stigmatizing, let's just call it violence, right? So either they want it generic or they want to use it strategically. So for example, I'll tell you about myself. I'll absolutely use it strategically. So if I'm talking to you about it and I have no other way to describe it, I'll use it, right? Or if I'm advocating for a client for protection from state, I'll use it. I'll be like, you don't understand. This client of mine is facing honor-based violence. And I'll put it in capital letters in my submissions, right? Because I know that they will their flags will go up, they'll probably respond more quickly, right? But when I'm talking to a group of people who are trying to create a policy, I would be like, don't create a policy specific to honor-based violence. It will put them further into a shell. They will not come out. Don't stigmatize them. Don't label them. So that's the kind of struggle we see with the terminology and advocacy. And that's something which was something we were talking about for a long time, but the recent research report, which I just talked about, actually just clearly said it. So this is what we found out, that some of the professionals use it either for strategic purposes, or other ones just outright reject it. So talking about forced marriage and honor-based violence, it's very interesting because every forced marriage case might not have so-called honor-based violence or honor-related violence. So it's the same thing. Honor-based violence, honor-related violence, and honor killing. Honor killing is probably the worst form of it, but the violence usually happens on a continuum for a lot of women who are facing it. So sometimes, and it's actually covered in the next slide. So what I want to actually put out very clearly is that every honor-related violence issue is not forced marriages, but some forced marriages might happen because of honor-based violence or honor-related violence. Forced marriages happen because of many reasons. It happens just because family wants to reunite. It happens because of economic transaction. It happens because women are being exchanged as mode of commodity, as property. There are many, many, many reasons why forced marriages happen. Family ties, sometimes they're just promised as kids to each other, and stuff like that. But most of the time when the violence would happen, when there will be physical violence or emotional violence, there might be an honor-related issue connected to it, but not always. The key in both the cases is either it is forced marriages or honor-related violence. The key is that the violence would happen because there is a code which has been broken. That means that this person knew or ought to have known that there was a code this person was supposed to follow, a rule, and they broke it. Or there is a perception by the family or the community that they have broken a code. So I'll give you a very simple example. And I always try to relate it to how we all have codes in our families, right? So if we all give ourselves like 1 minute to think about, did I have a code when I was growing up? Yes, we all had. So in my family, for example, the code was I could not have boyfriends till I was 18-year-old, right? So that was the code. After 18, my father was like, it's your choice. You can go ahead. But till you're 18, you cannot have boyfriends, because that was the magic number in his head, that somehow at 18 I will be all mature to make my decisions, right? And coincidentally, at 18 I found my husband, right? So those are the kind of codes people have. So all my life, I think from 8 or 9 years onwards, knew that having a boyfriend before 18 will get me in trouble, right? So that's what the honor code looks like. It can look different for different people. It could be dressing, it could be boyfriends, it could be simple friends, leave alone boyfriends. It could be your social life. It can be bizarre things, curfew for the time to come back to home, right? So honor code is not unique to certain communities or certain group of people. Honor code is something we all know in different shapes and forms to ourselves. They basically are very unique to a family. They're not unique to a community. They're very unique to a family. So as I'm telling you, it was the age when I could make a boyfriend. For some of my other friends, it was the length of their skirt. They could wear skirt, but they could not wear short skirt, right? Some other people I know had it all around their dinner time, right? 7 o'clock is your dinner time. If you're not home by 7, your life is done, right? So it's different for different families. It's not about the community, and that's something really important to understand. So if we have to define forced marriages, it's a complex issue. So the definition is pretty complex as well, but it took us almost like 3 years to come to a consensus. I work with a group of people. It's called Network of Agencies Against Forced Marriages, NAFM. It has like 20 odd agencies and some 5 to 10 individuals who are part of that network. And it took us 3 years to come to a consensus for a definition. But this is the definition we came up with, that a forced marriage is a form of violence. So that's right in the definition. And it's an abuse of human rights. It is a practice in which a marriage takes place without free consent of individuals getting married. Forced marriage can happen to anyone of any gender and any age. Now, that's something which is really important to remember, that forced marriages is not something which happens to women only. It happens to women, men, and people of different gender orientation. So I'll show you the data later in the presentation, but we have had, the data has reflected it happens to transgender people, gay people, lesbians. So it happens to people from all different kind of sexual orientations, and because of different reasons sometimes. But it's not only an issue related to women. But saying that, I also want to recognize and appreciate the fact, at the end of the day, it all stems from the control, power, and patriarchy. So it's still, the framing of the issue still is rooted very much in the violence against women framework. So again, both men and women of all ages and culture, religious and socioeconomic background experience FM. Now, because I work at South Asian Legal Clinic of Ontario, and because I'm a South Asian, whenever I talk about this topic, it all becomes about South Asians. And yes, my expertise would lie with the South Asians, if I have any, because I do work with that population. But the reality is the data has shown time and again, and also because of my work experience with different communities, because we act as consultant for many different communities, it's pretty clear at this point it's not issue of a particular community. It's a very widespread issue, and that's how we should talk about it. Now, another interesting thing which we see time and again when we talk about this issue is that people tend to believe that arranged marriage and forced marriages are probably the same thing. Or if not same, pretty much similar, close. To me, I don't want to get bogged down by the terminologies, so I don't really believe that if someone is talking about violence but using arranged marriage, it's a crime. That's not what I believe. But there is a distinct difference, and we need to recognize it. The distinct difference is that in the arranged marriages, the idea is traditionally that both parties consent. Both parties agree for this relationship. Whereas in forced marriages, both parties or one of the parties not agreeing to this relationship. Now, what can happen though is they're on the different sides of the spectrum, but there can be a twist, as shown in the graph. The twist is where sometimes when the conversation begins as a plain arranged marriage situation, but it converts into a forced marriage situation at some point. So elaborating on it, say someone in my family, when I was coming to the age of, I'm just giving you an example, this is not what happened to me, but someone in my family comes to me and says, say it's my cousin, you know what, you're not seeing anyone, let's find you someone, let's hook you up, right? Or it's very similar to how people go on eHarmony these days. eHarmony is very popular, I've heard, right? So people put you out there, right? So your family puts you out there and it's like, we are looking for a match. And then they'll find someone and they'll ask me to go and meet this person. Most of the times in ethnocultural context, the first meeting would never be alone. It would be with people, right? So there will be cousins, parents sometimes, brothers, sisters, and it'll be a meeting. So now in this meeting, if I kind of like this person to an extent where I want to meet him again or her again, I'll go and meet this person again. And that second meeting might be alone or might be with someone else. A lot of times these days, because parties are in different continents, they are chatting, calling. And then finally one day, if both the parties agree, they go to the family or they tell someone in the family, I like this guy enough that I can get engaged or get married, and then the marriage happens. That's the way how it is supposed to be and how it used to be. So my parents got married in 1970, and from what I learned from their experience, my mother met my father maybe 5 or 6 times, and it took him 15 times of persuasion to make her agree, right? It was a pure arranged marriage. We used to find him a little bit too snob, because he was an engineer, she was a teacher. So it took him a while to convince that, no, I am a good guy. And she agreed, and they went through 1 year of courtship and then marriage. This all happened in 1970 in India, right? A pure arranged marriage. Come to the forced marriage situation, when someone is saying, yes, okay, fine, I'll go and meet. Now, the family on the third meeting goes, that's it, done, you've met him enough, you're getting married. And the person is saying, no, I need to meet more. No, you don't need to meet more. You are getting married. I always give this example that sometimes this is the right time for you to get married. This is the right season, right? Because then the stars will change and you won't be able to get married. So get married right now. Or you have met enough. If you'll meet more, you'll dishonor us. If people come to know that you're meeting this guy whom we are planning you to get married to, it'll basically be shame for us. So that's when the twist happens, and where someone had willingly entered into a conversation, willingly entered to get married, is now being forced. This force can be very subtle and very confusing also for some people, because someone who's ready to get married and is ready to meet people is now suddenly feeling all this pressure and be like, but this is not what I signed up for. I was saying, fine, I'll meet this person, but the whole family comes down emotionally and in worst cases physically and be like, no, you have to get married. You just can't keep on meeting this person, because that's not something we do, right? So that's why, though there are two distinct things, but there can be an overlap, there can be confusion. And so when people come up to me and say like, no, they're not different, they're same, I'm like, no, they are different. They can look same in certain situations. So forced marriage and human trafficking is also something which we see that in a lot of cases people might be trafficked multiple times or single time by the perpetrators. And in some jurisdictions, for example, in Australia, the forced marriage laws are actually framed in human trafficking legislation. So they don't have a separate forced marriage laws, but what they do is they tackle the situations in the light of how the trafficking is tackled. But we see that a lot of times that people might be trafficked domestically or internationally, more than one time also. So in terms of the legislation in Canada, we don't have anything which formally addresses forced marriages at this point, but we do have a lot of criminal law scenarios and immigration law scenarios which can be the consequences of the forced marriages. So, for example, if someone is being assaulted for getting married, that will be a case of assault. Or if someone has been kidnapped and is being kept in confinement, that would be a criminal case of confinement and kidnapping. So there are a lot of regular, traditional form of violence which might be the outcome of the forced marriage situation and will be tackled in the legal system under those categories. So when we say that it has not been formally addressed, we can't say that it cannot be formally tackled because the scenarios might be very similar to how traditionally violence looks. Other than that, Canada has been signatory to many international conventions. Some we have ratified, some we have not ratified, but Canada has been part of a lot of treaties where they have agreed that Canada does not support forced marriages, does not support honor-based violence, and specifically for the marriage, Canada has actually ratified a convention where they said that we will make sure that any marriage in Canada will not be a forced marriage. But we haven't done anything for the local jurisdiction. So, are there any lawyers in the room? No? Okay, so there is. Right. So, and we all know that international conventions are great, but they're difficult to argue in the cases. Like if you're going to the court and trying to give international convention as your legal support, that's not going to go very far, right? So, so they're great to have for advocacy, but not for the legal support in the courts. So, in terms of what SALCO has done so far with the forced marriages, I thought it would be great to just talk quickly about the snapshot. We have been dealing with these cases since 2005. I came to the clinic in 2007, and I have been personally dealing with these cases at the clinic since 2007. I was in UK briefly before that for 3 years, and I did see some of the cases there and how the legislation was developed in UK. So I've observed that. In 2008, we did an international convention, the first international convention where we invited people from all across, from Canada as well as abroad, to talk about the issue, to understand the issue, basically to create some local tools. And in 2008, 2009, 2010, we created some local tools. So we have a 3-hour-long training module, which we is like our dog and pony show, which we take everywhere to train service providers. It has some case management and case consultation and how to deal with the issue, how to resolve the issue. So it's a 3-hour-long module, but we also encourage a lot of agencies to basically just go take that module and run the training themselves, and we support them. We have also created a website to support the same thing, as well as for the victims. Something which we did more recently was that we actually launched a national, it was supposed to be an Ontario-wide survey, but became a national survey on the issue of the forced marriages, and basically to capture data around what kind of victims are service providers seeing. So it's not a direct data from victims, it's the data from the service providers. Most of the data is from GTA still, but we have cases from Quebec, we have cases from BC, and all across Ontario in that data. So I'll show you some of the outcomes of the data. The report from the data is not formally released yet, but it is getting launched very soon. But the research is complete, the data is complete, and the report writing has been finished too. So it's just that we got some funding from Ontario Women's Directorate to do a formal launch, so we are waiting for that. So what was this survey meant to do? The survey was meant to do this. We wanted to actually look at the policies and the gaps where we could make some recommendations for formally addressing the forced marriages issue in Canada. That was the motive behind. We also wanted to basically look at the cases as they were happening, and most in particular, we wanted to basically either confirm the myths which were out there or negate them, and that's what I'm going to show you. So these are the cases which we collected. So in total, we collected 219 cases. There were 202 female cases. There were 13 male cases, and 3 transgender other cases, and 1 unknown. So that's the gender identification of these cases as it was given to us by the service providers. Obviously, it's very clear, as I said before, it happens to male, but the data doesn't reflect a very big number of male population. It can be because of multiple reasons. One of the reasons could be that the agencies which we were capturing data from were primarily VAW agencies, and a lot of them don't have even mandate to work with men. So, yeah. It is national, but the bulk of the cases is from Ontario. So data is national, but the bulk I have to say that because of the lack of resources, we could not do a very widespread launch all across Canada. So yeah, and the time frame is also very tight. We are only looking at data from 2010 January to 2012 of November. So we are also looking at a very tight time frame. It's only less than 2 years time frame. That's another reason why the number is not very high. But to be really honest, I didn't expect it to be more than this anyways. So it's not an endemic as some people make it out to be. Is it an issue? Yes, very much. I think even if one woman is being violated because of forced marriages, it's an issue, in my opinion. So 219 is, I think, a pretty big number. So another interesting thing is about the age of the victims. A lot of times we heard that, or probably it just happens to very young people, it happens to people who can't take control of their lives, and stuff like that. That's something which we heard time and again. But the data showed something very interesting. It shows that people who are victimized the most are within the age group of 19 to 24. That's the biggest group, which means it's not necessarily the people who have lack of resources or who cannot get help. 19 to 24 is probably the age group, which is probably in a college or a university. So they have a little bit more control over their personhood as compared to people who are in school system, in high school system, I mean to say. And most definitely, they are also people who are probably out there in some kind of profession or some kind of employment, even if it's part-time. So there is control of their personhood, but they still can get forced into marriages. People who are in the higher age bracket, from the data we saw that they were usually being forced into a second marriage or a third marriage. So the first marriage didn't work out. Whether it was a forced marriage or arranged marriage or a marriage with choice, doesn't matter. But if they are unmarried at that time, divorced or just unmarried at around middle age, they get forced into marriages second or third time by their families. But because being alone is not safe. I don't know how being in an abusive marriage is safe, but length of time spent in Canada. Now, that's another very, very interesting piece of information which we all need to pay attention to, because time and again it is said it's an issue of people from outside Canada, one, or it's only the people who come to Canada, new Canadians do it, right? That's the perception which is out there. And from my personal experience, I always said, it's not true. A lot of my clients have either born here or have been living here for many, many years. So as per the citizenship requirement, you are considered a new immigrant in Ontario only for 3 years, right? After that, you're no more a new immigrant, and you don't get any new immigrant settlement services. They are done for you. And the people we captured this data with, most of the people who were facing forced marriages, they have spent more than 10 years in Canada. So 31% people had spent more than 10 years in Canada, or they were born in Canada. So which really helps us to understand that it's not an issue, at least now, it's not an issue which is just something foreign to us. It's local, it's ours, it's happening to us, it's not happening to them anymore, right? So, and that definitely helps us to say that the policies should be created for us, not for them or for a particular group of people. So in general, when forced marriage cases happen, there are 3 kinds of cases which we see. The one kind is where both the parties are within Canada. So the boy and the girl, both are in Canada, and they will be forced into a marriage. So there is no relation to their status. They're not, doesn't matter whether they're immigrant, refugees, or citizens. This marriage is not happening for bringing a person in. Both the parties are here. In some cases, the victim comes from abroad to Canada. So this victim is now a foreign national, but is brought to Canada in a forced marriage situation. A lot of times, these victims don't know what they're going to, or they're very happy going to Canada. They're thinking that we are going to the heaven of earth, and we will, meet our best life. But they actually land up in a confined, very harsh environment where they are sometimes made to work 24 hours a day and not given enough shelter, food, or protection, what they actually think they are coming to. The third kind of victims are the victims who are taken out of Canada. Is there a question there?
Yeah, I was just wondering, taken out of their country?
No, this is taken out of our country.
Of Canada.
Yeah, so that's the third kind, and this is what that data talks about, that people who are taken out of Canada for forced marriages. So what happens is that the family will plan a vacation, right? Like, we are going on next summer vacation. Would you like to come? And who in their right mind would say no to that, right? It's a summer vacation. Let's go. And the next thing the young women know is that they're left behind, or they're told you can only come back once you sponsor this person who now you're married to. Sometimes without being at their own marriage ceremony, because someone else stood in for them, or sometimes being married with a lot of force and violence. And sorry.
The red part, is it the factor it comes from another country or from Canada?
No, so the red part is where they are not taken out of country. Both the parties are here. Yeah. So their status at that point doesn't mean anything. In some minuscule cases, actually, it might. Because, for example, if a Canadian citizen is being married to a refugee claimant, it might be because the family is trying to get this person regular status. So in some minuscule cases, that still might be an issue. Like the immigration status still might be an issue. But most of the cases, immigration is not an issue when the marriages happen forcefully within Canada. And we see a lot more cases of those kind now. A lot of international attention is paid to the cases where people are taken abroad, and rightly so, because I do believe that they are highly marginalized and they are at the peak of the risk if they're taken outside the country. Because honestly, you don't even can access police or basic security services in some of those jurisdictions. So I do believe that the chances of getting some kind of protection are much better if you are within Canada, even if it will come, say, a year down the line, or at the time of the child of the birth, or at the time when something really, really harsh happens and it escalates to a point where you're hospitalized. So the protection will come to the person if the people are within Canada. The chances are higher. But if the people are taken abroad, the chances to bring them back and the struggles to bring them back are a lot more serious. So again, the reason I'm talking about this is that although, as I said, that we do need a better policies and better structure for people who are taken abroad, we should remember, again, that there are cases where both the parties are here, and we shouldn't be surprised if someone comes to you and says, I'm being forced into a marriage, and a lot of times people get answers like this: you are 27, how can you be forced to do anything? So that's not the reality for a lot of clients we work with. So reasons for this kind of forced marriage. So this data kind of ties back to the honor-related violence issue, right? If you look at the reasons, you'll see there are 3 reasons which are directly related to our honor: cultural tradition, family reputation, morality, and honor. So all these 3 things are honor-related issues. So as I said before, not every forced marriage is an honor-related violence issue, but a lot of them can be because of different reasons. And you might wonder why we have all 3 differently. Because for people, when you ask them a question, why do you think your family is doing this? They have different perception of this. They don't club everything under so-called honor-based violence. Sometimes they say, this is what the culture of the family is. This is how my mother got married. This is how my sister got married. This is how women in my family get married, or men in my family get married. So that becomes their cultural issue. Sometimes they say, if I don't do it, if I don't go ahead and do exactly how my family wants me to do this, it will be sad for them as they lose face in the community, right? Which can look very different when you look at the economic strata. So in the higher bracket economic strata, we see getting married to from your class is really important. So now you're an educated woman, you are a lawyer, you cannot get married to a plumber. It has to be from your own class as per the family. So family actually have crisis if the woman comes and says, I have fallen in love with an electrician, and I want to get married. I'm a doctor. This is like the biggest crisis for that family they can ever face. And when they call someone like me, they're like, how can you not understand? You're one of us. Don't you know what it's going to do to me and to my family? And sometimes, even if women go ahead and get married to their own choice, we also see, what we have also observed is that family will keep on intervening and nagging to a point that this relationship will break down. Right? They will make sure that it does not continue because it does not suit their sensibilities, right? So that's different than how we perceive honor-based violence, how we think about honor-related violence. Morality and honor. So morality and honor is when you're promised to someone because of some old tradition, right? Or when you were born, at the same time we promised you. It is within the family. This is the right thing to do. We only get married to cousins. You're not supposed to get married outside the clan. So this is morally correct for you to do, because if you will do anything else, it'll become immoral. Your relationship outside the clan is immoral for you. So just think about a 25-year-old woman who's being told, if you get married to someone else, it's immoral. Who wants to do any immoral thing? Like any of us in this room, do we want to do anything which is immoral for us? No. We always put morality before law even sometimes in our heads. I always say that who cares what the law is? If it's wrong, right? And that's the dilemma these women face, because they have been socially they have been socialized in a way, they have been made to think in a way that they can't actually make a free choice without basically feeling guilty about it. And the economic transaction is big, huge, because some of the traditions have dowry attached to the marriages, right? So the marriage actually does not happen just for family honor, reputation, class. It happens because there is a serious amount of money related to this marriage. So either this money is being given physically, or there's a business which is connected. So this marriage is happening because this business will remain the way it is running. It will run smoothly. Or there is a transaction of land which will happen if the marriage happens elsewhere. Because sometimes if you do not marry to this one particular person, the chances are that the inheritance you're going to get in the form of land might go to someone else. So they try to keep the marriages within their clans so that the land doesn't move out. So it can look very different for different families, the economic transaction. In some sad cases, which are the ones actually we think about most or are told about most, is where the economic transaction is happening because of the immigration status. So here is the money, get married to this person, bring this person here, right? But unfortunately, we hear about those cases the most. But that's not the most number of cases. The most number of cases when we are talking about economic transaction is more about containing the wealth within the family. The immigration and sponsorship, as I said, is also one of the reasons why people do get married. Though we have talked about a lot in the media on fraud marriages, or we have a conditional permanent visa stuff now happening because of the fraud marriages, but unfortunately, when we were talking about fraud marriages a couple of years back, we did not talk about forced marriages enough. When I say we as Canadian society, I'd say we as people who are working in Canada from different sectors, that there should have been enough conversation on the issue of the forced marriages when the discussion on the fraud marriages happened. And it happened over the last couple of years. Which brings me to my next topic, which is the status of the individuals facing forced marriage situation. Now, again, it is time and again thought that it happens to people who are not Canadians. This data confirms it, that out of the 219 cases, 44% people were actually citizens. So, and followed by the permanent residents whose status is somewhat more secure than others, and then non-status, other or unknown status of the country. So how does that influence forced marriage situation? It is about the protection they can get. So if you look at the graph here, The non-status people have least amount of protection available to them if the forced marriages happen to them. Because one, they are without status, so they don't know what will happen if they will go and talk to any kind of enforcement. They don't know what will happen to them, whether they will be able to stay in Canada, or if they are outside Canada, will they be able to get any protection from Canada. So how can that happen? How can someone be outside Canada without status? So if someone gets married into a forced marriage situation, but is a foreign national, so they don't have any status in Canada, but they are now married to a Canadian citizen into a forced marriage situation. And they can actually tell, before coming to Canada, to the authorities, this is a forced marriage. The outcome would be that sponsorship will fail right there and then. Because you are saying you're forced into a marriage, which that means for family law is no marriage, right? Because we all know if it's a forced marriage, it is a marriage which is voidable. So they won't be allowed to come in. And if they're not allowed to come in, then they can't expect any protection from the country they're in, because that country is obviously not giving her resources where she can go to say, I am getting forced into this marriage. Can someone please help me out? That is not happening. And if she reports it to the authorities, Canadian authorities, the chances are that she will probably get beaten up, killed in her home country. So there can be cases where non-status person can be abroad and try to get help from Canadian authorities, saying very clearly, this is a forced marriage situation. Can you please still take me in to your country? I will come and prove my case. This person can get temporary resident visas. This person can also get refugee status. So that is, but the protection, again, available to them, the choices available to them are very minimal, and the success rate of these kind of cases is very, very low. Saying that, I should say that, yes, some cases might see success, but again, it requires a lot more advocacy and support, which a lot of these people cannot get. Temporary residents and permanent, the temporary residents, so the ones we talk about who are on, say, work visas or student visas, as we see the number of students, foreign students, and number of foreign workers is increasing, we also see the cases of violence being reported by this class of people is also increasing, and the protection available to them is low. The threshold of protection is very low. We don't have a lot of same kind of protection which is extended to, say, a permanent resident or a citizen being extended to them. They don't have access to all the resources. So say, for example, I was working with a client recently who was here on a work visa, but working for her own in-laws. So her husband is back home, but she is working here in really bad trafficked conditions at her own in-laws' place, where she's not being paid, where she's not being given any kind of holidays, days off. There's no Saturday, there's no Sunday, there is no regulated hours to work. But the protection available to her is obviously nothing close to what it could be if she was a permanent resident or a citizen, because her visa is very closely connected to her in-laws' family, and if she goes and reports it, then her chances of becoming a permanent resident reduce. So she has to she has to make two choices. Either I leave this family, go out, try to get another job and land myself, or I stay with them and land myself and then leave them. So it's one of the two of the worst ones to choose from for these clients. Refugees, again, they have somewhat more protection as compared to the rest of the two classes we just talked about, but the protection extended to them is, again, still not as much for resident and citizens. In terms of the protection for residents and citizens, we all know that permanent residents and citizens are, the only difference we think about is, oh, the residents can't vote and citizens can, but when it comes to the cases where they're taken abroad, the exercise to bring a permanent resident back is very, very harsh and difficult, because a permanent resident, if they are in their own home country, are supposed to be responsibility of their own home country. So they are basically, say, for example, if I'm taken to India, and forced into a marriage in India, because I am a born Indian citizen and not a citizen of Canada yet, I will be under the protection of Indian state, right? And Canadian state won't be able to intervene because they will be like, Deepa is Indian citizen and India should do something about it. We can't intervene. As it is, because we don't have any international agreements at this point, Canada cannot go to the cops, local cops, and be like, can you do something? On a formal basis. On informal basis, a lot of stuff happens. But on a formal basis, they can't write a letter saying, we know Deepa really well. People in Canada know Deepa really well. Can you please provide some protection to her? No, they cannot formally do anything because I am responsible for my own access to the resources when I'm in India. I'm not supposed to access resources from Canada when I'm in India. So if you think about it logically, it makes sense. But when people are in dire need to come back to Canada because their life is here and they cannot get any protection from the state where they are, it is, yes, sir? Sorry.
It used to be, I'm not sure it's still like this, if you have dual citizenship, Canada cannot protect you in your home country. Is it still the case?
See, with the dual citizenship, it becomes a bit tricky. I wouldn't say that Canada cannot, but Canada would not like to, right? Cannot is not the right thing to say. And if you meet the right person on the line, on the other side of the line, they can intervene and they can potentially do something about it. But yes, they would not. And when I deal with these cases, I sometimes used to tell women, keep your passports safe and don't travel, with your family. And, we used to even keep their passports in safety deposit box for them or keep it with a counselor. And then I came to know that they have second passports from their home countries. And so they're now taken on the second passport. So which I found very, very difficult to negotiate then. I can get her one passport canceled, but her second passport, which she doesn't even know about sometimes where it is, she is made to travel on those passports. So dual citizenship can be very tricky. I heard it very hard way myself. So in terms of the perpetrators, so the perpetrators of forced marriages cases as well as honor-based violence cases, it's interesting. It's not one perpetrator as other forms of violence could have. And say in partner abuse, it's partner abuse, right? So it's just one partner who is abusing. In these cases, it could be multiple perpetrators. It could be mother, father, sister, uncle, neighbor, the whole community, the whole congregation of their church, which they go to. So you can't identify that this one person is forcing me into this marriage, or this one person is asking me to follow this honor code, so-called honor code, right? It's the whole community. And sometimes when you're trying to get protection for these people and asking them to, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say these people, asking for women or young people to get protection, you're basically telling them that you have to leave your life. So it's not the abusive situation they have to leave. They have to leave their entire life as they knew, because the perpetrator is not just this one person or this two people or three people. It's their community. In terms of the violence, we saw that 75% of the women who are facing forced marriages would face some kind of mental or physical violence. So there would be a very minuscule 25% cases where there might not be violence which can manifest itself. So it is a violence in its own, but the violence which you can define or identify, 75% of them. And sometimes, even if the marriage happens, so there are cases where you are trying to prevent marriages, right? So in some cases, when the marriage happens, these marriages, most of the time, we saw from the data, they were abusive marriages. And yes?
So 75% of survey respondents reported mental or social pressure as a form of violence. So it's not necessarily a physical violence.
Not necessarily a physical violence. Not necessarily a physical violence. And so those cases where we see, a woman is beaten black and blue, and then she is wearing like those pictures we see on the internet. That's not the reality. I have seen videos of women. They're happy at their marriage. They're enjoying their marriage, and when it is a forced marriage. We had a documentary filmmaker who did a very interesting compilation of the videos from the marriage time of the forced marriage victims, and it's interesting to see. Not all victims, when they are being forced into marriage, are sad. Some of them are just doing it. They're just enjoying the day and be like, it's happening. What can I do, really, right? So they're just going by, and some are crying. Some are very apparently, clearly, you can say, this is forced marriage. Why wasn't someone saying anything about it? Why were people at reception party not saying something about it? But in a lot of cases, people are just taking it in their stride, kind of a thing. Sorry.
It's on the 75% figure here.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that 25% have physical violence, or in this 75% we have also physical?
No. In the 75%, we did not have physical violence. No physical violence. The rest might have physical violence or not. There was financial control. There were other criteria. So the rest might have only some other stuff happening. I didn't bring the breakdown. I'm sorry. Because it was the data is really extensive, so I didn't bring the breakdown. But if you're interested, I will give you my card, or we'll exchange information. I'll send it to you. The report is, as I said, ready. We are just trying to make it fancy for the launch. So contextualizing the practice of forced marriages in Canada. Now, this is an important slide, and I'm really glad that I have time today to go over it, because most of the time, by the time I reach to this slide in my talks, I have to rush through it because it's towards the end of the talk. So when we are talking about the contextualizing the practice, these practices are not happening in a silo. Forced marriage doesn't happen on its own. There are lots of things which is happening around this family, which is practicing a forced marriage, or which is practicing honor-related violence. And it's really important that we understand that context if we are serious about doing something about it. Because if we are not serious about doing something about it, we might not understand anything and be like, label these families, these people do this, these people have problems, they have learned it over the thousands of years, and we will create a policy which just tackles these people. And soon enough, I can guarantee that within like few years, we will have to revisit it, because it's not about these people. It's about the context these communities or the people who face these forms of violence live in. And the context has the context of immigration control. So families are living in different two parts of the continents. They want to be together. Which family doesn't want to be together? Most of the people here in Canada understand what that means, to have your family outside the country. Most of us understand, because if we have not experienced it ourselves, our grandparents did, or if their grandparents didn't, their parents did, right? So all of us understand that context. So when families live in the context of immigration control, where they can't be together in one place, they will use marriage as a form of reuniting, right? And we have to understand, if we have that concept out there, we need to work with that concept. We can't have immigration system and then work against it, right? We can't say like, we have immigration system, but we won't allow you to have these practices. We can't have that happening at the same time. We have to understand that communities do this because of immigration and start from there. So that's the understanding of the context. And when I'm saying start from there, that how these practices happen, where can we intervene? So, I mean, a very simple example, we can intervene in our school system. We can talk about this in our school system. Do we talk about this in our school system? No, we don't. All the data shows that people who are being forced into these marriages have lived here in Canada more than 10 years. In those 10 years, do you think we do not get a chance to interact with them as a system, educate them, try to understand them, learn from them? No, we do. But do we do that? Unfortunately, we don't do that, right? So immigration is a big context we have to understand. Economic conditions. Now, that's another thing. Communities which live in poverty, we clearly know that communities who live in poverty have a high representation in the criminal justice system. There's data available, we all know this, right? So obviously, if a certain community is living in poverty, there will be incidents of forced marriages happening there. We know we can intervene there. We can have intervention strategies there, but we don't have it at this point. So that's another important aspect to understand. So when we talk about this, South Asian community in GTA is probably one of the richest communities in GTA, but it's also one of the poorest communities in GTA, right? When I went and talked about stuff like this in South Asia, people couldn't understand because there's one portion of South Asians who are very rich, but then there is another portion of South Asians who live below poverty line. They can't even, they don't even have the minimum resources which are available because of their immigration status or so many other issues, right? So, so we would see forced marriages everywhere, but certainly the chance to plan an intervention within the poverty realm is real, and we can do it, but we haven't done anything about that so far. Cultural stereotyping and sexism. Now, these are, and patriarchy. Now, that's really important to understand. The cultural stereotyping, the minute that happens, anyone who, if I'm walking in my Indian outfit with my dupatta in my throat, and I'm walking on the street, and you believe that, you know, this poor woman must be facing so much violence at home, you know, yeah. That happens, right? I sometimes check myself doing that because we all work that way, right? If I was standing in front of you with my headgear on, you would think about me differently, right? So that happens. Who does it? Our media does it. Our education system does it. We do it to ourselves. So, and that's something which we have to think about and check ourselves in doing it, especially when we're talking about honor-related violence and forced marriages. Patriarchy is universal. It's not something which happens to one particular community. We are living in a patriarchal structure. We have to fight it on a day-to-day basis, and not for a particular community. We have to fight it for everyone. And that's a context we are living in, and that's the context in which these cases are happening. Racism and xenophobia. Now, this is two-way street. There is a racism and xenophobia towards the communities, but the communities also have internalized racism and xenophobia. And they are afraid to, if my daughter gets married to someone from other race, that's like end of my life, right? So that's the education, again, which needs to happen. A lot of people, when talk about it, they always talk about it from one side of the, and which I believe is the dominant discourse, and it should remain like this, but it is a two-way street at this point, and we need to tackle it from both sides. Classism, again, as I discussed before, for certain communities, it's all about class, and it's sometimes, I say when we talk about isms, I believe that classism is a bigger and more evil ism than the xenophobia and racism even. Because you can educate people about racism, but to educate people about classism is one another gambit of issues. Heterosexism and transphobia. Now that's huge. People don't want to even talk about it. It's like elephant in the room sometimes when you're working with the ethnocultural communities. And once we normalize some stuff like that, we can definitely normalize saying it's not your tradition. It's not your culture. Let's redefine your culture. Let's choose what you want to keep from your culture and what you want to let go of at this point, right? But that's a conversation to be had. That's an education to be done. It's not that, you know, we'll do something about it without going from point A to point B, right? You have to go through that journey to basically come to the outcome which we want to see. So, talking about the outcome, and so here are some of the recommendations from the report. So, one of the most important recommendations is that we need to have a centralized national education strategy around forced marriages. Right now, it's very bifurcated. People are getting help. It's not as if anyone who is facing a situation like this can't call anywhere. That's not really true. There are people in this room right now, I know, who are working with clients. I work with clients. People get help all the time, but there is a big chunk which doesn't get help because we don't have a national mandate around these issues, and that's something which we need. There's a need for multi-sectoral uniform training. When I say multi-sectoral uniform training, I say cops, immigration, health sector, education sector, everyone needs to know how to tackle it in a uniform way. Because if we all come up with our own little strategies and we don't talk to each other, clients get confused. Victims are highly confused. We also need uniform counselor services. So right now what happens, the experience of a victim who is stuck in Pakistan or experience of a victim who is stuck in Turkey or in India is all different. Every counselor services, our counselor services in every country responds differently. So we need to change that. We need to have a policy in place. We need to have agreements in place so that people can, we as service providers know that I do not have to track down who is responsible for this particular country to get help to my client. I should be confident to pick up the phone, report the case, and move on to my next case, right? It is economically more efficient for our country if we have that. I love when I do that argument because that's like the most argument which I think policymakers understand the most. The centralized database of FM resources, right? Because we have a very bifurcated database right now, right? We don't have, I feel sad when I meet people from all across Canada and I see their beautiful work and I'm like, why didn't I know about this when I was tackling with that particular case 2 years back, right? I feel like I not do enough research? Was I not enough talking to people? I feel sad myself, right? Because you're like, oh God, this was exactly what I was looking for 2 years back when that woman from BC called me. But no, I didn't know about it because we don't have a national database at this point. Some of the things from the report, the UFT report, is that we cannot have what is that called? One size fits all. We can't have that strategy, right? One size will not fit all. So we need uniform policies, but when we are talking about intervention, we need to have intervention for the specific communities. So there are two different things, right? I'm not trying to confuse you. The policies, the law, the legislation needs to be uniform for everyone. But localized intervention, the grassroots intervention cannot be identical for everyone because we all know from what we have discussed so far, every family is different, leave alone the community. So you have to think about how can we cater to each family, have a uniform rule book, but how can we cater it to them? How can we basically tailor it around their need? And that's something which we really need, and we have been told again and again by the service providers. So, and another really interesting thing is that when we use terminology like honor killings, it's very exotic, right? It sells, right? But does it really help or not? That's a serious discussion. That's something which we really need to think about. That are we doing more harm than good by using these kind of terminology? We definitely need to rethink about how we talk about violence in general. Is there a way to include these forms of violence when we talk about violence against women? Another important argument, which I have given it out, and some audience likes it, some doesn't, so we'll decide how you take it. If I'm talking about honor-based violence, and it's so exotic, everyone pays attention to it, I think I'm doing disservice to all other forms of violence against women. Because if you look at the numbers, we have only had maybe 10 prosecutions in last 3-4 years in the name of honor-based violence. Look at the number of women who have been killed in the name of violence alone. It's 6 every 5 days, I assume, right now, right? So I think that if we put so much focus on this, we are doing disservice to the violence against women in general, because that's a far more serious and far more important issue to be kept on the radar. And we always need to have that perspective in mind when we are talking about any issue against violence, because it's not about one thing. It's about that we as women get violated everywhere, all across the globe, all the time. And that's the perspective we need to keep in mind when we're talking about the issues. Again, how can we address this issue? We can keep a very anti-racist and anti-oppressive approach when we're talking about it. We need an institutional commitment. So this institutional commitment looks very different for every institution, but we need it from all different levels, right? From, say, it starts from municipality, goes to the feds. We need commitment from all different levels of government and education sector and health sector and so on. We need to build public and community accountability. So we can't keep on saying, those people do it, this person do it, this community does it, it happens in this particular pocket. We are not going to reach anywhere if we keep on tagging to that argument. We need to talk about how we all are part of this process, how we all can be made accountable for the violence our communities are facing. We need to create safe spaces that encourage open and inclusive dialogue. So I want to thank you, the organizers of this event. This is that safe space where we are having an open dialogue, and hopefully throughout the day we'll talk about it and learn from each other. Prevention-focused initiatives across communities. So it's not about how can you penalize them. It's not about they should know it's a crime in Canada, because last I checked, a lot of things are crimes in Canada and still happen, right? So that's not going to help us. We need to talk about how can we prevent the families, the victims, from these kind of incidents. Engaging with both youth and parents, caregivers, and family members. Now, that's a key. No one wants to do it because they're perpetrators, right? But if you don't engage with perpetrators, violence is not going to stop, right? Because it is a unique violence in its form, and you have opportunities to engage with them. The education system has opportunities. The health system has an opportunity. The family doctors have opportunities. There are many times they interact with the system as a unit together, where they can be educated. Slowly, the shift would happen. Ensuring service to both men and women of all sexual orientations. Now, that's really important, because when I looked at the data, I was really sad to see that there was such a small number of men and transgender people reflected in there. Now, at the end, I just want to quote it from the report that it's a complex issue in Canada, and we know that the impact is really devastating on the lives of the victims. Again, as I said, it doesn't matter if it's 219 or 2. If it's a form of a violence, it's happening in our community, we need to do something about it. And we haven't done enough. And I think we need commitment from all different levels to do something about it. And thank you.